Admiral Dmitry Pashenko was only a boy when his homeland collapsed. At 6 years old he had seen civil war engulf his nation. Fires raged across the countryside. Some of them were comprised of fuel and flame, others were comprised of wrath and envy. As always with those types of war, only ashes would remain. Ukraine was once a country north of the Black Sea. It was in a small town near the Crimean Peninsula, where his parents had chosen to raise their 5 children. Dmitry was the fourth of the 5, 3 older brothers, and 1 younger sister. The 3 oldest boys helped their father farm. It wasn't a large piece of land, barely enough to make ends meet. But it was theirs. When he was 5, Dmitry demanded that he be given a job too. His father had smiled at him warmly and said, "Little Dmitry, I am glad that you want to help. Someday soon, your muscles will be big and strong, and you'll be able to join us in the fields. Until then, watch over your sister and help your mother in the kitchen." Dmitry had followed his father's words to the letter, taking his duty very seriously. He liked to cook and clean. He enjoyed it even more than mother seemed to. Still, the men worked the fields. And so, Dmitry looked forward to the day when he would be allowed to join them. That day never came. His eldest brother, Alexei, was a man, grown by the time the crisis descended into war. At 18, he had enlisted in the Ukrainian National Army, fighting against the rebels in the east. Dmitry remembered the proud look his brother had as he packed his belongings and left their family home. A year later, his body came home in a bag. Alexei's bravery had bought him that much. A note came too. It was nothing more than a thank you from the high command in Kiev. Though his father had forbade him to read it, Dmitry had done so in the darkness of night. A small flashlight illuminated the short paragraph. He remembered the words near the end. "Your son died bravely, take pride and solace in the fact that he was saving his country, a task that would be less without him." Dmitry believed it then too. He took some small pride in the fact that his brother had fought well. He would later see that beyond his own family, no one would mourn nor care for Alexei Pashenko. There was too much death and too much ruin for any nameless boy dead on the battlefield to matter. People only cared if the body bag came to their door. The rest was beyond their horizon. By the time that Alexei was buried on a small hill near the farm, the next 2 brothers had decided they too wanted to fight for their country, though for differing sides. Goran, the second oldest, ran away to Kiev to defend the capital from the rebel scum. Vlad, who was Dmitry's best friend in the whole world, told him one night that he was going to run away as well. East had been his only reply as to where he would go. Vlad wanted his nation to join the rising power of the Russo-Kazakhstan Federation. The European Union was a poor alternative, the 14-year-old told his younger brother. Its socialist programs had led to the decline of its economic prosperity. High unemployment and low motivation ran rampant. At least, that's how Vlad saw it. The Russo-Kazakhs had no such ideas of grand lifestyle. They cared only about power, and in destabilizing Ukraine, they sought a tighter stranglehold on Eastern Europe. Of course, Dmitry hadn't understood any of this. All he knew was that some people, like Alexei, were proud of their independence. Others, like Vlad, felt that their nation should join into something greater. Dmitry wanted to follow the path of his parents, who believed that peace was best, no matter who ruled. After all, his father had said one night at dinner, after Alexei was dead and Goran had departed, "A king who rules nothing but ashes is not a king at all." Vlad didn't listen to his father. He was 14 now, and he wanted to fight. He left one night. A note to his brother was all that remained. "Dmitry, brother, I shall miss you dearly. When the United Eastern Front liberates Kiev from the European pigs, and our nation is finally able to achieve its greatness, I shall return home to you and our dear sister Catherine. Then we shall buy 1,000 acres and farm and grow fat and rich and old together. Think of it, Dmitry, the glory of battle. Songs will be sung about how we defeated them. I shall add my name to the heroes of Ukraine. With sincerest love, your brother, Vladimir Pashenko." Within the next 3 years of war that tore the country asunder, both Vlad and Goran followed their eldest brother to the grave. Goran's little note was even shorter, printed on cardstock, because rationing had made paper a scarce commodity. Vlad, being a rebel, received no letter at all. They never got his body either. Just a passing farm boy's words. He had been at the front, he said. Vlad had asked him before he died. Finally, the rebels looked to be near defeat. Then, the Russo-Kazakh Federation invaded, joining forces with the beleaguered United Eastern Front. Kiev was burnt to ashes, as it had been so many times in history. The country was declared a part of the newly christened Greater Kazakh Union. There were no songs sung about heroes of Ukraine. The peace that followed was worse than the war. It seems strange to think that such a thing might be possible, but it was. Things got much worse before they ever got better. Some nights, Dmitri still wondered if they ever really got better at all. Without help, the farm dwindled to nearly nothing. Their family survived on scraps and handouts from equally hungry neighbors. Theft and murder grew ever more common. Dmitri remembered how his father had been put up against the wall of their kitchen and shot. He remembered the glazed-over look his father's eyes had as they stared into oblivion. The patriarch of the Pashenko lineage was executed because he had the fortitude to demand that his wife and children be left out of whatever it was that the armed thugs wanted from their family. They had taken his mother upstairs to the bedroom. Her wails had echoed through the house, occasionally punctuated by the sound of a hard slap. After a few hours, she was dead too, throat slit in her own bed. Dmitri and Catherine stayed hidden in the kitchen pantry for what must have been several days. They had both cried ceaselessly. All that remained was ashes. Finally, the pantry stores ran dry, and they had no choice but to venture into the nightmare that their nation had become. When they snuck out, a 10-year-old boy and his 8-year-old sister, their town was in ruins. Half the population had been burned out. The other half was scared witless and would not take the Pashenko siblings in. The next 2 years were a blur of running and hiding. At the border to Slovakia, the pair were caught by the now paramilitary United Eastern Front. Dmitri was declared a traitor to his nation. Catherine was declared property. For 3 weeks they kept him chained in the back of a troop transport truck as it rumbled east toward Kiev. Catherine screamed the first time they violated her. The next few times she wept and begged. Finally, she grew silent and distant. Beautiful, innocent, wonderful Catherine. They left her body on the roadside. Though, it wasn't an unusual sight, and the carrion birds were most appreciative. His sister's dead eyes stared at him from that ditch across the world. She haunted Dmitri's dreams. For 5 more years, he was left to rot in a gulag in Kiev. Then the Ukrainians and the Russians decided that they no longer wanted any part of the Great Federation and rebelled in another bloody civil war. When it was finally over a few years later, Kazakhstan stood alone and Ukraine and Russia were free, but burning. Ashes. I'm king of ashes. Dmitri Pashenko left the east and vowed never to return. He had forsaken the past. Every single piece of it lay in shattered ruins behind him. The ghosts of long-gone terrors and departed loved ones are not easily left behind. Thousands of miles is not enough to separate a man from his guilty conscience. It seemed that the past had always managed to keep pace with him, no matter how fast Dmitri tried to outrun it. That was a lifetime ago though. Now, from the deck of the USS Pride, he looked out over the calm blue waters of the Pacific. Dmitri's mind was not nearly as still as the ocean around him. He had his orders. Attack, annihilate, burn them to ashes. His adopted country trusted him. Dmitri was not a traitor. They would not harm him. Finally, he broke out of his memories. "Mr. Jones," he said to the captain next to him on the bridge. "Take us east." The enemy awaited in the east, so did the ashes. The author's name and the link to original text is in the description. Consider tapping the thumbs up and pressing the subscribe button if you enjoyed this video.